very high chance. The number one cause of testicular cancer is when boys are born, the testicles are in the body and they drop out. Right. That's why they need to be cooler than the body temperature so the sperm and everything else can live.
Right.
And what happens is that if you have non-descending testicle or testicles, then the likelihood of you having cancer is, I would say, like 100 times greater. I don't know what the exact number is, but it's way up there, because all the people that I have spoken with, and this gentleman that we had, this young boy that we just lost, all had the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the number one thing, is if you're born with non-descending testicles, they have to go up there and get them and bring them down.
It is my honor and privilege to have a friend of mine, Bob Darrah, who volunteered to come on and tell his story, his testimonial about his recovery from testicular cancer. And as he says, it's about time men start having this conversation, because we know the way we were raised, particularly in our culture, that we don't talk about private parts. We don't talk about emotions. We don't talk about a lot of things. And we don't have a tendency to reach out for help also regarding our health. So sometimes it's too late by the time we do. So it's great that we can have this conversation with a man who I have a lot of respect for. He doesn't do anything halfway. You know, he really educated himself about testicular cancer when he found out he had it. So he is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm happy to have him on today, and I'm looking forward to hearing his story and also getting informed about testicular cancer. So welcome, Bob.
Thanks, Ed. I appreciate you doing all these things for the men and the boys out there. Growing up in a military family, I had, my dad loved me very much, but he would show me through things that he would do. He wouldn't verbalize that with me, only because I don't think he even knew how to do that. I had 3 sisters that were all older than I was. So when it came down to boy stuff, men stuff, nothing was ever talked about. What I found out 19 years ago, I had noticed that my left testicle was heavier for some reason than my right. And it had been like that for, I don't know how long, but for a while. And finally, when I went to the doctors, I asked my doctor, I said, hey, is there a reason this could be happening? And he said, hey, I'm going to get you over to this urologist. I have an idea what it might be, but I don't want to say anything until we figure it out. So while I was waiting to see him, which was literally that day, which was kind of weird because normally, you're a week out or a month out before you can see these people. They took me right away. Right. I ran over, got blood tests. I went to the hospital. They did an ultrasound. They did a bunch of different things. And this transpired from like 9 or 10 in the morning until like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I went in to see the urologist, and I walked in, and literally there was over 100 people waiting, and he had like 6 doctors there, but he's the main guy. And I walk in, the guy's like going from office to office. He goes, drop your drawers. Checked it out. He goes, we're taking it out tomorrow. I go, what? He goes, we got your blood test back, and you have the most radical testicular cancer you can have. We're not going to waste any time. You plan on having more kids? No. Okay, we're going to remove it tomorrow. My nurse is going to set you up for the prep. I'll call you later tonight. This is how busy this guy is. And this is all happening real quick. So I go home. I'm calling all my buddies that are doctors, and they're calling their buddies that are urologists and all this other stuff. And so next thing you know, I get up the next morning, and the operation is supposed to start at 1. I get there at 11, maybe at 1:30, and I get there at like noon, maybe a little bit before noon with Donna. And as we're walking in, my pastor's wife was walking out and says, "Oh, what, you know," and Madonna told her what happened. And the cool thing is I'm sitting there all prepped, with just a gown on, ready to go in to get operated on. And all these men from my church showed up and, prayed with me. And it was a great feeling, just a great feeling. My spiritual beliefs, Don, I felt super comfortable with anyway.
Right.
So I had, and I actually, I kind of left this part out, but I actually had a hernia also on that left side. So I walk in, I get pushed into the operating room. There's two doctors there. One's going to fix the hernia. The other one's going to remove the left testicle where the tumor had resided. Mm-hmm. And as they go in there, as they remove it or whatever, they check the lymph nodes, they check, all the stuff. And they actually didn't get me in until, I'll say, 2:45 on a Friday. And I wake up and it's like 3:30. It's only like 45, 50 minutes, from the time I went into and I go, oh, shoot, it didn't go good because it happened so fast.
Right.
And the doctor came in. My wife, Donna, was super excited. She already had talked to him. And they felt like the tumor was still encapsulated within the testicle, that it hadn't spread. They took some lymph nodes, saw no sign of spreading. And they fixed the hernia. The hardest part was the hernia part, where they had to put the mesh in and fix that part.
Yeah.
And the one doctor was giving the other doctor a hard time because I guess he was already done, and the other guy's still working hard on it. So these guys are all friends and stuff, and obviously I'm out of it, so I don't even know what's going on. But afterwards, they were joking about it and stuff, about how much time he took. Mm. So what happened after that was that we were preparing to do chemo and radiation. And we had businesses all over Southern California, and I was driving back from a business in Orange County on a Friday, and I was supposed to start my chemo on Monday. And I had a buddy of mine, Craig, who sent me Lance Armstrong, the Tour de France guy, and who had testicular cancer, really bad testicular cancer. Mm-hmm. And he gave me the book. It's not about the bike. It talks about, when you're riding and stuff like that, it's about getting mentally strong, being prepared and all that, for what we're going to do. And then I read that. And then there's two doctors that he worked with. Doctor, I think it's Eisner, an older guy. They both were at I want to say Chicago or somewhere in Illinois, somewhere at the colleges there. And then Nichols moved to like Portland or something like that. So I asked my oncologist, as a lady, to, if she knew anything about these guys, and she didn't, but she reached out to them. Well, I get a call on Friday, and I'm getting my chemo starting that Monday, and Donna's all excited. She goes, well, Lance Armstrong's doctor, here's at his 5th Tour de France, in 2003. In Paris, actually took the time out and called my oncologist and said, don't do the chemo. Let's do what they call surveillance. And all surveillance is that they were able to, every month I'd go in, I'd get blood tests, I'd get x-rays, I'd get scans, and they would check to see if the cancer has returned anywhere. Typically, in testicular cancer, it would come back into the abdomen. Right. But it could come back anywhere. Like with Lance Armstrong, he had an abdomen, he had it in the lungs, brain. And he had it in 2 spots of his brain where they had to shave his head and cut his brain up. So anyway, which was a great feeling because now I'm not having to go through all this, putting all this bad stuff in my body.
Right.
And so this went on every month for 2 years. And then in year 3 through 5, it went on, actually year 3 through 4, it went on every other month. And then year 5, we were doing it twice a year. And then I do it at least once a year still. And they have two blood test tumor markers. It's called an alpha beta test. And one's a beta HC. Wait. It's a alpha theta protein, AFP. And then the other one is, but either one, but I still, it's not, almost 19 years later. And just for mental, I get it still tested and the numbers are so good. it's a huge blessing. But the reason we really need to understand is that I was blessed that we found it early enough. I work with kids all the time now with testicular cancer, or just with kids in general. And I always let the parents know that, hey, you need to check the kids out. The women are so far advanced when it comes to, especially breast cancer. They've had Susan G. Komen forever. They do the walks. So the young girls know growing up that, hey, this is something that, my mom and whoever is, taking care of them, that they need to understand their body and feel for lumps and get the tests and stuff. Men don't do that, and the bottom line is that when your body starts to change, especially after you're 18, 19, 20 years old, your body. And if something is weird, like when I felt that the left side was heavier, a noticeable heaviness, I probably should have gone on 3, 4, 5 months earlier.
Right.
But I finally, got the courage up to say something to my doctor, saying, "Hey, doc, something's weird down there. What's going on?" So while I've been working on Facebook pages with kids with testicular cancer, typically the age range are anywhere from 15 to 35. That's probably 85% of the people that get it. I got it in my 40s.
Wow.
You can get it as a baby. And two of my really closest friends growing up, their kids played, I want to say soccer or lacrosse with a kid, and he had testicular cancer, and they asked me to talk to him, and I did, and they did similar things they did to him, they did with me. And they thought they had gotten it all. It was, I want to say, the 5-year mark. I think it was a 10-year mark. And it had come back. And then we just lost him last year at 39 or 40 years old. And the kids took it really tough, because the one girl, my best friend's daughter, has been battling breast cancer for the past 2 years. And they were kind of going through it at the same time.
Right.
The one thing I found out that this gentleman had, and it's probably a very high chance, the number one cause of testicular cancer is when boys are born, the testicles are in the body and they drop out. Right. That's why they need to be cooler than the body temperature, so the sperm and everything else can live.
Right.
And what happens is that if you have non-descending testicle or testicles, then the likelihood of you having cancer is, I would say, like 100 times greater. I don't know what the exact number is, but it's way up there, because all the people that I have spoken with, and this gentleman that we had, this young boy that we just lost, all had the same thing. Mm-hmm. So that's the number one thing, is if you're born with non-descending testicles, they have to go up there and get them and bring them down. So if people want to have kids later on in life, it's another thing. As you go through puberty, makes a big difference. Also, that age is anywhere from 5 to 8 years old, and then 13 to 18 years old. There's two times that you go through that.
Right.
And it affects your testosterone levels. It affects everything, which we all need as we get older, especially as we get older and we start losing it. So the awareness part, and letting people know that it's okay to talk about that. It's okay to it's so important for kids. And there's so many single moms now that are raising boys. Okay. And if they don't feel comfortable talking about it, they should have a man, if it's from church, or a man that they trust, to have that conversation with them to make sure everything's still okay down there.
Right.
And maybe they were born normal. Okay. And they didn't have, birth, I call it birth defect, because it happens, before you're born,
right.
And then once you're born, it's potentially still a problem. Mm-hmm. So that awareness is so important. Self-checking ourselves, like the women do with their breasts, we need to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And the more we can get that out there, Ed, I think the lives we're going to save.
Right. click the link in the description to receive your free ultimate guide for men over 45, Unlocking the 10 Secrets to a Fulfilling Life. So from what I understand in the research I've done is you want to be checking yourselves at least once a month. Maybe you feel it should be more. In the shower is the best place to do it because the warm water is going to help kind of loosen things up and make it easier to do that self check. And what are we looking for when we're doing that self-examination? We're just looking for.
Well, if you really want to, go through the examination, you want to check size. Mm-hmm. If it's grown, if you feel it's grown, or you want to check for, like I said, heaviness, because a tumor is heavy. Okay, it's a mass that and again, when we're in the shower, it's a great place definitely to test that. Mm-hmm. But other things and this is what happened with Lance Armstrong and happens with other people as we're kids and we ride bikes. And if you're riding and you go to put the pedal down and you miss it and you rack yourself on the bar, it's painful. And sometimes, and Lance Armstrong thought that his problems was because, hitting his, his testicles on the bike all the time because it falls so many times.
Right.
And that can affect also what happens, but it shouldn't create a heaviness more than it should just create maybe a swelling or just, tissue, getting inflamed and things like that.
Which will get better.
It will get better.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
it will improve.
Right. Yeah, but testicular cancer is not going to.
Correct. Until you do, and it's a very simple blood test that they can take to see if you do have it. They can also do it through an ultrasound. I would suggest if it runs in the family, as kids, I would get it done, once every, 2, 3, 4 years or whatever. If your parents had it, if your dad had it. Mm-hmm. But, again, we know, as we're lifting weights, as we're exercising, our muscles grow, we grow as we get older, we get taller, but once they say at the age of 18 or 19 years old, that part of your body, unfortunately, stops growing, the good part, but that is, it just breaks me up every time I go onto a testicular page, cancer page. There's about 3 that I belong to now. And I think we lose at least one young kid, at least one a month, because of not detecting, not getting early examination, not understanding that. So any time we could have that awareness, and what you, like I said, I just want to commend you for what you're doing for men, for everything for men, health all the way around for men. But this is for the kids, mainly. Like I said, it's a young man's disease, typically 15 to 35, and normally in the teens, in the late teens, early 20s is when this happens. The doctors are getting a lot better. They're understanding this a lot more. For me, it's unfortunate. I was 6 months old, and I went to Germany for 5 years. My dad was in the military, and he was assigned over there, where they don't have any great hospitals there. I have military. The military guys are awesome, but they're not on top of a lot of the new techniques like the teaching hospitals are here in the U.S.
Right.
So I kind of fell into that hole too. So when we got back and I was 6 years old, that's when they did operations on me. And even at that age, I don't really remember a whole lot outside of getting operated on twice, on having these huge incisions. And me going out and playing football before it was too early, and I opened up some of my stitches on one side. It's just I didn't want to be down. I wanted to have fun. But I think nowadays they're a lot better at identifying. But don't take it lightly. That's all I can say is, and if you have any question, go and get it checked out. It's like my dad. I told you about my dad. My dad never got sick a day in his life. His dad lived to be 104, his dad lived to be 104, and then their dad lived to be 108. My dad thought he would live forever,
Yeah.
and he had signs of prostate cancer. My mom said he was having, there's different signs for that. I don't know if you've done one of these on prostates, but what happens is, you start, the urination problems,
Right.
and then you have problems with the libido, the sex, and all that stuff.
Right.
That had been going on for 6 or 8 years, my mom said. And by the time they found out my dad was stage 4, they gave him 6 to 12 months to live. He made it 10 years. He made it to 67.
Wow.
But it's still, again, I've lost several really close friends to that. As much as I tell them, you need to get your PSA checked minimum of every 5 years. I get my check again. I get that checked once or twice a year also.
Yeah. 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 I get that checked once a year myself. I go for, I don't know why I decided in my 20s to start going for an annual physical. And so I had that, you get that foundation, that the baseline. So then, you can tell when things go up and when things go down. But yeah, that's something I have checked every year is my PSA. I do have what's called a benign enlarged prostate. So it does affect some of my the flow rate. But I've been able to help control that with some herbals. Yeah, I mean, that's another, maybe I'll have someone on another time when it's Prostate Awareness Month, because that is another thing for me.
That's a big one, Ed. That's so much bigger because it does happen as we all get older, as men do get older. It's going to happen. They said in autopsies that when they've done autopsies on men, I think the number is like almost close to 90% of men all have some form of prostate cancer when they do these. The question is it going to outlive you, or are you going to outlive it?
Right.
Right. So that'd be a great topic.
Yes, it definitely will be. So early detection, from what I read, 90 to 95% cure rate if testicular cancer is caught early, which is so that self-examination is so crucial. They remove the testicle, and sometimes, from what I understand, they'll put a prosthetic in. So you choose that. That's your choice.
They offer it to me, and at my age, I don't need I don't know. It'd be weird having, I guess, a fake one in there. But it's different with women because you can see
right,
their breasts and stuff. But with men, and everyone laughs at me and think I'm weird, but it's more comfortable only having one down there because you know how it is. It's just the weirdest thing, and all my friends go, "Don't even talk about that," because they have both theirs, But no one ever wants to lose it.
Right.
They lose them all, but but I still get my other one checked, because it doesn't. It's not like breast cancer. They're this totally separate. Yeah, all your parts that connect the testicle to the urethra or all the whatever those things are that go through, it's all separate. So so the chances of having them in both, it could happen. I would say that I would still get the other one checked, because once your body learns to make cancer, no matter what cancer you have, it's like it becomes, now it knows it can create that bad stuff in your body. And typically when it comes back, it's going to come back in your abdomen. It could come back anywhere. And what's really weird is that they still call it testicular cancer no matter where it's at in your body, because it started there.
Right.
So
Bob, when you learned that you had testicular cancer, what went through your mind? I know some people, they hear that word and it's, for them, it's like this, they think the worst possible thing is going to happen. What went through your mind emotionally and mentally when you found out you had cancer?
Everything won't move so fast. I didn't have a whole lot of time. I've been through it with, my dad had prostate, my mom had colon cancer. I have, been through it before. People having it. My spiritual walk was super important because I trusted in um, in my faith that I was going to be okay. And if I wasn't, whatever was going to happen was going to happen.
Right.
Donna was super strong. People would look at us and talk to us and couldn't understand how relaxed we were. And it's just, you're never ready to hear the C word,
Right.
especially when it comes to you. But you know what? It's we just did what we needed to do.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm calling everybody. I was up till midnight calling buddies of mine that were doctors and had all kind of connections and stuff, and checking out my doctor to see how good was this guy. And this guy graduated UCLA medical school, and he's one of the top people. Just happened to be in my city, so I was very fortunate for that. It's just, but at the end of the day, like you said, 95% cure rate if you find it early,
Right.
and you do what they tell you to do. It's really simple to do.
Right.
Right. I was blessed that I didn't have to go through everything that other people had to go through.
Right.
And hopefully it's been 19 years and we won't see it again.
Yeah.
But if it does, we do what we have to do.
Exactly.
But I really want to, because it's happened so much, and like I said, the kids, I watch, Michael and Jackie and their friend go through this. They called me immediately because they knew I had it.
Right.
And basically asked me, what should I do? And I said, well, let me talk to him. And let's, make sure he's got the right doctors. He went to Johns Hopkins.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go to a better hospital than that.
Absolutely not.
It's just, they honestly thought they were at that point. I think it was the 10-year mark, and it came back,
Right.
and then unfortunately it came back in several spots. Now, I don't know the details. I don't know if he stopped doing surveillance, but you don't ever stop doing that. Like you said, you do your annual.
Yep.
If I had cancer, like I still have, it's been 19 years. They told me 10 years ago I don't have to get tested. Guess what? I get my annual blood test. It's not like they have to take out more blood. They just will do an additional couple tests.
Exactly.
On my beta HCG or my alpha theta protein, and then my PSA for my prostate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that simple.
Right.
So it's unfortunate that, because like you said, there's a base number,
Right.
and when that thing starts to grow, then immediately they should have been able to find out and hopefully been able to stop it before it went to other areas of the body.
Right.
And I don't know. I can't speak specifically because I didn't ask that question, because by the time I found out, it was already too late.
Right.
I found out like just days before they lost him.
Right.
But early detection and everything in life.
Absolutely.
Not being afraid. Don't be afraid to go to the doctors. My dad never went to the doctors. And we learn from who our mentors are.
Right.
My biggest suggestion for any men out there, if you don't have them, doesn't matter how old you are, find somebody in your life that you trust, that you can talk to, and that will tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
Right.
Because I always want people to tell me what I need to hear. Right. Because if they got to stick a foot in my rear end, stick a foot in my rear end, because I give them permission.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all need that. I mean, you've helped me with using herbs. You've helped me with, my weight. I'm down 14 pounds since we started doing the challenge.
Wow, that's awesome.
I got a long way to go.
Yep.
But we all need men in our lives. And I'm looking forward to the men's group that we just started last
Mm-hmm.
week.
Mm-hmm.
To invite people into that. And again, I appreciate you helping, actually dedicating your life to helping men. You're an awesome person for doing that. I love you to death. I just know that you're going to make a big impact.
Thank you.
So
Appreciate it.
I enjoy this, and I look forward to some of the future studies that you're going to do and talks you're going to do with other men out there.
Well, appreciate it, Bob. Thanks for coming on and sharing your experience, strength, and hope. And I shouldn't reference you as a testicular cancer survivor. You're a thriver. You're thriving in your life, and you're sharing that with other men. And I really appreciate you, love you, and thanks again for sharing your experience around testicular cancer. Thank
All
you.
right. Keep up the good work. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob. If you like that video, check out my other video on understanding testosterone for men.